And we are live. Hi, everyone. I am here with Patrick. Patrick, you are in Florida and you're running a tournament right in the middle of hurricane season, I'm told.
That happened last year. Yeah, we
Yeah.
literally had a hurricane come rolling in during our second half of our every 6 months we do an event at the HMGS-south
Yep.
Recon, and now our upcoming one that we'll be talking about is Recon.
Hopefully hurricane free.
Oh, this one will be hurricane free. Now, it doesn't mean we don't get tornadoes or something else come through, but you know,
But yeah, you never know. Right. So me and Patrick, we're going to talk about the event because there's actually three different events, two icebreaker events and then one main event. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the meta and you, Patrick, can tell us all about the thought process behind some of the missions that you made for this event as well. And yeah. So
hopefully,
sorry?
hopefully you enjoyed those little twists of the custom ones.
Definitely. Right. So I will just share my screen so we can go. Patrick was nice enough to do a bit of a PowerPoint for us, and I have added a little bit of my own here. So here we go. And here we go. From the beginning. Right, here we go.
There you go.
So HMGS South Recon 2025. Um, and Oh, sorry, my phone is going off like crazy. So, Patrick, you are the TO and board member. Sounds very official. How big is HMGS going to be this year?
We usually have anywhere between around like 600 attendees down here in Orlando, Florida. And the HMGS South has been around for a long time. Matter of fact, our tournaments have been part of the HMGS South since version one, when
Yeah,
it was just a rule book, and that
yeah.
was it. So we've been here a while.
Okay, brilliant. And you run other games as well at the HMGS, right?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
or sometimes I just even take a break and play. But I also, as an organizer, I help manage things such as we just brought on board painting as well now to start teaching people how to paint, which has
Mm,
really been a great thing to bring in. And spend a little time with vendor relations and try to jump in and have a little bit of fun in the off time as well.
brilliant. So for the tournaments that you're going to run, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So it's the full weekend. Talk us through the thought process that you had when you decided on this format.
With Thursday, I just wanted something kind of light, fun for the players to come in. Last year, during the Huracan, we did a tank battle, and we had just had this big mass battle, and we had a lot of laughs. But a
Mm,
lot of people wanted, have it maybe a little bit more concentrated, where they could focus a little bit more on the game itself than the mass pandemonium of a mass battle. And I took that feedback from our players and I said, hey, okay, we're going to make it like a little bit of an icebreaker. We're going to kind of ease into the V3 rules because this is our first official V3 event. So it's last time, literally the weekend, the rule book had just hit the streets. And so we didn't have a chance to implement V3 because they usually allow a 30-day period
yeah.
before a book is official for an event, and just wanted something nice where players can come. Not everybody always makes it on Thursday night, so we have some fun. We play some games. We throw out surprises. Everybody has a good time, and it sets a nice tone for the weekend.
Yeah.
And and then you have the Friday. We're going to come in with the 750 recon patrols. We took the tank and the artillery element out, and just kind of focusing more on that again, like the invasion force or that
Mm,
first kind of moving fast units trying to get in there. And I tried to theme a lot of the scenarios to that same kind of flavor as well. So it kind of has a little bit of a theme the weekend. And also our HMGS South, we tried to theme all of our events. And as you can tell, there's a crab there. And you're
yep.
probably wondering, why did I stick a crab with a knife?
A little bit.
It, well, this time around, it was called Surf and Turf. And
Okay.
we tried to encourage a lot of the games going on to be kind of thematic
Yeah.
to that. And then, of course, the big game on Saturday, the 1250.
Mm. So let's talk about the tank wars first. So armored platoons only, no other platoons allowed, which is it really lends itself into you going out and spending like a gazillion points on heavy tanks, right? There's no limit on order dice, but I mean, if you can only take armor platoons, it's sort of limiting anyway.
Hmm.
Um, uh, and it's just for a few rounds and test the tables, which I really like. So the idea here for me is really cool. But we shall see, because once we get into talking about the lists, those it's going to be total pandemonium, I think, and completely random who wins.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
So talk us through the scenarios that you're going to run with Tank Wars here.
Uh, pretty much these are going to be your two standards. You're going to have the, straight up just kill one another style event, and then you're also going to have the, um, I decided to have a little bit of fun with Fog of War, and I know some
Yeah,
people they avoid Fog of War like the plague.
yeah.
I personally like to throw a little bit of curveballs at the players, and it makes I think for a little bit more interesting. So, we originally only planned for 2 rounds since we're starting around 6 o'clock. By
Mm,
the time we get through a couple of rounds, I don't want people tired for the next day and the next day after that. I want people to kind of, be able to come in that Thursday, have a couple of games, get settled, and go back and come in refreshed on Friday.
yeah. And fog of war, it means that it's very, very hard to take it seriously because when you have 5 or 4 order dice, it's going to be such a fun game. It's just going to be amazingly fun driving those big tanks in and trying to get something that you can shoot, right?
Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
So
think
that's brilliant.
fun.
Yeah. Looking over the lists, this is one of my slides. I mean, every single list is between 3 and 5 order dice. So the 3 order dice, they're all Death Stars, and then a couple of players are going anti-meta of going into tank hunters, and those are specifically American lists, right? So one list has the M10 tank hunter, and the other list has the Hellcats, like 5 Hellcats
Yeah.
with Recce and all of that. And I mean, if any of those Hellcats ever gets hit by one of the other tanks, it's dead. It's completely blasted away. But oh man, will the Hellcats be annoying and dangerous as well? Having 5 of those. Who do you think are going to win?
Well, I definitely kind of agree with you. I think the Hellcat heavies are going to be, I think, a big, huge surprise.
Yeah,
I was kind of waiting to see some German players see if they wanted to try to throw a Tiger or the Panthers in there,
yeah,
or try to throw some of the big kitties in there and
yeah.
see how they have the chance to bustle in. Because again, I don't really think we've seen a lot of lists out there yet that has really exercised the big cats yet.
No. And you will see one list because my predictions are that one of these 3 players, so Chris, Scott, or Matt, I think will win, and that's the 2 American Tank Hunter lists. But also there's a German Death Star, so a very heavy tank. I think was it a Tiger 2 or something like that? It was a very
Yeah,
heavy tank, right? With
yeah.
cancer rays on it. So really like almost indestructible, and with that panzer rays, it's even more dangerous. I think that potentially could go in and kill a few enemy tanks and win a game, maybe. Um, so yeah, but as I said before to you, Patrick, I think this is going to be absolute pandemonium. I have very limited experience of running 5 orderized lists, 3 orderized lists in this format. It's just I who can tell what will be good? No one knows really. So, and then we get into the recon bit. So the 750 recon patrol. Talk us through that one.
Well, the Recon Patrol is very small, very limited in certain respects. We're going to run the 3 rounds. There's no dice limit on this one for order dice, but we have the no allowance for artillery or tank platoons. So this is primarily going to focus on rifle, infantry, heavy, recce,
Mm.
the engineers, the support weapons. You're going to see those platoons kind of coming in. And the idea for this is I wanted to kind of be a little bit thematic for this event again, was that rushing in to an area with minimum forces, you didn't have time to get your artillery or your tanks into place yet, which is kind of set up for the big event on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of sets a nice tone and a precedence for the event.
Mm. I think that the 2 hour rounds may be pushing it a little bit, but I hope you guys have tested this out for some games, because I think some players will struggle with 2 hour games, even at 750. But yeah.
And I agree. I think there could be a little bit of concern there, but that was one of the cautions that I made sure as I posted this up. I said, as you're building your list, make sure you're comfortable with being able to run your lists, because I don't suspect people would deliberately slow play, but
No.
I think you could have some players that are just may not have tested their list enough or confident enough in the rules in their play yet to be able to run those efficient lists.
Yeah, I agree.
Old parts like us, yeah.
Yeah. And then you made some specific custom missions for some of this. So double top secret. Now, top secret is one of those missions that I really hate, and I'm going to play it at the WTC this weekend. So I'm not looking forward to this. But double top, what is that all about?
Well, it's like you said, you hate it, and usually it's one of those ones. It's either one and done, and a lot of times you're finished by turn 2 or turn 3, particularly if the player knows that event is there and that they can kind of custom their list to be able to zip in enough vehicles, particularly, heaven forbid, if like the TO actually sets a road up perfectly for you to drive right up, surround it with some vehicles, grab the objective, and you're off the table and you're having a beer by turn 3. And and you don't really enjoy that list or walk away from that type of game happy with how it goes, because it kind of comes down to a lot of the dice and how prepared somebody is. So with double top secret, I decided to have a little bit of fun and actually still give a chance for the other player to either go for that draw still, and also for the person who actually maybe wins to actually get even a higher win. And in this case, this is split into 2 4x3 sections. You put an objective in the center of each one, and then at the beginning of the turn, one of the players rolls the dice, and on the left, 1 to 3, and on the right, 4 to 6. That becomes the immobile objective. And what this is designed to do is think about it like there were experimental tanks, experimental planes, things like that. So maybe that tank broke down, and of course
you're not capture it.
Yeah. So, and the other one could be maybe the inventor that was in the tank, or possibly one of the pilot, the tank drivers or pilots for the aircraft. And that's the one that you can get off the table. So it's designed to kind of create a little bit of a little duality to the game and add a little extra flavor to it. And the past games, I've been doing this since V1, and it seems to work really well. Everybody seems to like the fact that this kind of flavors things a little bit different, and it makes it more fun.
Yeah. I may have to steal this mission at some point, because it looks a lot more fun than the ordinary top secret. And then there's the supply drop run, which is basically a version of key positions, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a variant of that. At the beginning, and just as a formality for our tournament, the tournament organizer rolls for all the tables, so everybody has the same number of objectives on the table, so it's balanced in that regard. And in this one, a little different from key positions, is only D3 plus 2 objectives. And what you do is on turn 3, you're going to put a stack of chips in the exact center of the table, and you're going to take an order dice that has the arrow on it, and you're going to take 3d6, and you're going to roll and scatter each of the objectives. So what's interesting on this one is when the players are picking sides, unlike key position,
they don't know where the objectives are going to go.
Yeah, you have no clue where the objectives are going to go. And so for those first 2 turns, you're kind of jockeying, trying to be ready, like, okay, is it going to go here? And so it keeps some people from hanging back.
Yeah.
And because if a lot of them scatter towards the opponent, they're going to have to be aggressive.
You're going to have to push.
Yeah. So I think this one's has been a very successful event. I've dropped this one in, I believe, since V2, and people seem to really love it. They like the randomness. They like the little bit of fun that it kind of brings to, again, the event.
Yeah. For me, going into competitive board action, I wouldn't do this because they might all scatter into my opponent's side. But at a historical fun or just a warm up game, oh man, would this be a fun game to play? So good on you, sir. Well designed mission here. And let's talk about what I am seeing for this Recon event. I'm seeing 18 to 14 order dice, which I guess is what we would expect, right? 750 goes a little lower than the average order dice for 1,000 points, right? So that's the order dice range. I'm seeing some people go what I would call mixed bag or balanced list with a little bit of everything. I'm seeing some people lean a little bit into flamethrowers, barbecuing. Not massively, but like picking a few engineers, maybe a flamethrower team, and some transport for that. I'm seeing some people lean into mechanized, but again, not massively. And some people are what I would term skirmish armies, which is a lot of riflemen or people with like ranged firepower that can shoot you at range and move a little bit and maneuver around the table. Is that also what you are seeing and what you would expect at such an event?
Yeah, and I think one of the general impressions I picked up from seeing a lot of the players' lists was that they wanted to experiment. They want to see what they can do with the new format, with how you can build the platoons in such a new way in V3. And so I think a lot of people are really trying to see, what kind of magic, how does this work, what's the performance like. Yeah. And I think we're going to see that all across the board.
I think so too. Lots of experiments, and that's also the lists seem very different to me. Like there's a huge variety in what people are actually doing with these lists, which is very, very nice. For my predictions, I think that one of these three people might win it. I think Randy, with his sort of bow special list here, which has it's a British mechanized assault, right? He basically makes a miniature tank platoon by just picking out a couple of armored transports and then puts Gurkhas inside them. That combination, although it's a lot worse than it was in V2, it's still pretty okay. I think he could do well. And at 13 order dice, he's also high on order dice. I also think Chris, with his 11 order dice mechanized LMGs, a German version of that, because he can sit back if he wants to and shoot you from his own deployment zone, or he can move up depending on where those objectives land, right? He can go into his Hanomaks and push into the center table if he needs to. And I also think that Jacob could potentially, with 11 order dice mechanized, he has got flamethrowers in a German list. For me, that's also a pretty good list. Do you have any favorites, Patrick?
I kind of agree with your assessment here. I know that Chris is a very aggressive player, so that mechanized list, I think, can be troubling for a lot of people. Yeah. And I definitely agree that I think the German barbecue delivery service, just make sure you have barbecue sauce at your table, because you might be eating that after you pick up your meal.
Yeah. Currywurst is the thing for that one. Barbecued German wursts. Anyways, so, and then you go into Sunday, 1250 platoons. Talk us through that one as well.
Yeah. This one's, the big event, we're 2.5 hour rounds, 3 rounds. We're allowing multiple platoons. This one, I did cap the order dice at 18. There was actually an interesting Warlord article that was talking about that as well, of their thoughts on dice capping. I personally try to do dice capping because, again, I want people to have not only a good competitive environment, but I want them to have fun. And sometimes it's very.
And you also sometimes want them just to finish games, right? Because if you allow 34 order dice lists and people don't it's almost impossible to finish a game against that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but no other restrictions. So this is the pure V3. You can do
Have
some
at it.
very hardcore stuff with that. 2.5 hour games is quick, but can still be done
Mhm.
if you know your list.
Definitely.
Um, Talk us through the scenarios here, because you're going
Well,
to do something weird again.
yeah, weird is like a trademark with me. The first scenario is what I call red herring, and this one has probably been by far probably one of my player favorites more than
Yeah.
anything. And we also have key position as well as land grab that you had
Mm.
in the prior slide there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, as we talked about a little bit beforehand, I like to throw in fog of war. A lot of TOs do not like to really mess around with fog of war, but I think fog of war adds a certain element to players who like to sit back and try to
Mm.
win by overwhelming with distance firepower.
Yeah.
And it doesn't reward a good balanced list players. And so I kind of wanted to utilize the fog of war, and more curious to see how it impacts the games a little bit.
Mm.
But talking about the custom scenario again, I like to play around with fun stuff. And the red herring was always inspired by the idea that the Allies did the inflatable tanks, the inflatable aircraft. There was a
Yeah.
lot of misdeception, things like that that always happens in wartime. And
Mm.
this one works very similar to point defense, but each player has 3 tokens. And what I typically do is give everybody 3 poker chips, red, white, and blue. And I
Yeah.
give everybody an envelope and half a piece of an index card that they can put in that envelope. Now, after both players have rolled off their table sides and they place their objectives down, just like following point defense, they nominate one of the 3 to be their fake. And then they
Mm.
seal it into an envelope. So nobody knows what that is until the very end of the game. And what has really been fun about this scenario is trying to guess which one it is, because I've seen so many people do so much fun stuff with this, like putting the objective, the fake one forward, and then watching the player think, all right, that's a real one because a lot of people is going to lead with it, and then they get surprised. Or they have a tendency to kind of do a center left or a center right, and then they'll kind of heavily defend one and not defend one of the objectives as heavily,
Yeah.
and kind of psych out the player. So there's a lot of psychological warfare, as I like to say. And everybody has fun. Everybody walks away from going like, man, I can't believe I didn't. you know?
I really like this idea of having objectives that may not be the true objectives. So there's a little bit of psychological game going on between the 2 players as well. That idea is something that we are often lacking in bold action otherwise. So good on you again for creating an interesting mission here. So what are we seeing in the lists? Well, the lists are 12 to 18 order dice, 18 of course being the cap. Um, I'm seeing so much Germany. It's almost, I mean, it's almost complete Germany. There's like, oh well,
It's probably
80% German or something like that. So it's really clear that the Armies of Germany book just came out, right? And everyone wants to try out their German lists, and most of us own a German list anyway. So, yeah. I'm seeing a couple of Death Stars, not many. I'm seeing some mechanized and tank platoons, and then of course there is like 3 guys bringing Brits, and they're all bringing double artillery of service because it's a little bit overpowered.
yeah.
um, it's so good because it forces your opponent to waste such a lot of time. Yeah. So that's what I'm seeing. Were you surprised by some of what people were bringing?
Not really. I expected to see a lot of German lists again because the new book, and I seen that happen when first edition came out, and everybody's like, oh, I can play what's in the rule book, or I can play this new army book.
Yeah.
And the same thing, is I'm seeing come around now in third edition is the Germans got the first book again. The Americans just literally dropped right now. I just got my
Yeah.
pre-order and
Yeah.
I'm going through it all excited. Matter of fact, had two players emailing me going, "Hey, are you allowing this?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I
No.
got to cool off."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to at least once the lists are in, you have to say there's the deadline for this. If something comes out, a new fact or whatever, it might even fix a lot of issues that you have. But I mean, some players tailor their list to that stuff, and if they can't
Yeah.
expect to go to an event where they know the rules, then that may be bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so my predictions for this, and this is again purely based on people's lists. I know like two of these players, but the rest of them I've never met. I don't know anything about you. Sorry guys if I didn't pick out your lists. I think Randy again could potentially be in the top placements depending on how well he does with the assaults, because he has a bow special, of course, with tanks, uh, Gurkhas, artillery observers, and then mechanized stuff, right? So that is a very, very, very strong combination at 18 order dice as well. So it's very high on order dice. David, I also have a little bit of history with. So and he's at 18 order dice as well. Tanks, again, the artillery observers and MSU, so multiple small units. If you're playing objectives, that is a good list because he has so many units that can go in and grab objectives. Yeah, they're weak and they die easily, but I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Stephen, you can talk to me about Stephen because I haven't met Stephen. What type of player is he? Because he's bringing a very fancy German list here with lots of mortars and mechanized stuff.
Well, a lot of his play style that I've seen and what I can get from the impression of now with how he's changing over to V3
Mm,
is it's I think he's experimenting a lot, but I think he's also kind of going with a lot of really strong, good meta right off the bat, like
yeah,
the drillings. I believe he
yeah,
has double drillings in there,
yeah.
and I am a huge fan of the drilling as well.
Mm,
And the running a Stummel, I think one of their lists had a Stummel in there as well,
yeah.
and a Puma. So he has a lot of little anti-tank, a little bit of infantry support, a lot of stuff
Mm,
that can knock away airstrikes and things like that, and drop a lot of templates,
yeah,
over 1 inches on a target
yeah,
that can be really ugly, and still also take out a lot of lighter vehicles as
mm,
well. But I think we're going to see an interesting performance out of I think that one.
yeah. I agree with that. And then Bradley, 18 order dice. He has Soviet scouts and tanks. Also,
Yeah.
very good combination. Because of that infiltration special rule, you get like +1 to your cover saves for the scouts. That's just very, very strong, right? So
Mhm.
yeah. Anyone that you think I've missed here for the top placements in our predictions here?
No, I think a lot of those are going to fall in there. I'm kind of curious to see how Andrew Russ with the airborne, and he kind of went with a really heavy on the
Yeah.
chassis side. So you got a lighter tank, medium anti-tank guns, so you could have a lot of like domination with the anti-tank
Mm.
guns against certain opponents, particularly mechanized.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe run into some struggles there with that. So I'm thinking that's going to be definitely interesting.
Mm.
Thomas also with his the FJ heavy list with stubborn and heavy on the veteran. I'm
Yep.
curious to see how that's going to do. I've played around my FJ. I've had some good results. I've had some not so good results.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a good point. Like interesting lists for both of these players. The triple Chaffee is very anti-tanky, and that could really knock out some of these other players who lean into tanks in another way, right? And
Hmm.
and of course the 16 order dice German list for Thomas. I mean, Feldjägers, it they look so damn cool on the tabletop. We all want them to really work. So please, Thomas, make them work. Um, so here at the end, we decided to look at a couple of lists, and I'll just stop this and find the lists for you guys. Just a sec. Here we go. And the lists, I have them somewhere. Oh, here.
There.
Yeah, here we go. Just a sec. I need to share again.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how this is going to play out. We have a lot of beautiful tables, and I'm just super excited. I have one beautiful autumn fall table that always has been a fan favorite. Last year, Recon introduced even an airfield, and a lot of people liked it, but they hated the large hangar in the scenery. So I was going to see if maybe I could shrink that down to a smaller one.
Yeah, large hangars or large buildings in general can be a bit of a pain to work with. Right. Mm-hmm. The first list that we wanted to talk about was Mitchell's for Recon. It's 12 ordered ice 750. So he brings the platoon commander, he brings Waffen SS 6-man units, Brandenburger special. He has the veteran sniper, so that's a lot of veterans here, right? The commander is also veteran, so that's a lot of people who are veteran. And then a heavy platoon with, again, veterans all the way down, veteran platoon commander, double German machine gun with Hitler's buzzsaw, a heavy mortar, and an AT rifle. 2 AT rifles, 3 AT rifles. Patrick, what are you seeing here?
I think that this list is going to be maybe I think a silent contender. I think between the Fanatics, I prefer Stubborn over Fanatics personally, but yeah. I think just the fact that he is so heavy on the bets that the Brandenburgers can mess up potentially outflanking, and the 3 anti-tank rifles could definitely mess up any armor carriers or soft skins or anything like that. So Randy might need to watch out for that, because you might get plinked to death with the anti-tank rifles, and so I think right there, a lot of people is going to have to be very cautious, because otherwise, I think the sustainability of the veteran, along with now the new cover rules, I think going to create a really good duality that may go in his favor, particularly if his dice are really hot that day.
Yeah. And it's going to be really, really difficult to shift him if he gets up to the objectives, and you're going to have to try to give him off those veterans down on objectives. Ooh, that's going to be a tough one. So this is a very, very survivable list for me as well, especially in this format where it's all infantry, right? You're going to have either some flamethrowers or a lot of SMGs in order to clear these out. Most people will not have that much firepower. So a really interesting list from Mitchell here. And then we were going to go and look at the tank lists as well. And we picked out mats for that. So this is the one that we mentioned a little bit earlier, the anti-tank list that Matt has created. And it's very basic. It does the same 5 times. So it's got an M18 Hellcat, 7+ armor, with the heavy anti-tank gun, and open-topped and recce. And that's it. That's it's as simple as that. 5 Hellcats. I think it's going to be amazingly fun to run, and I think it might actually be very effective.
I think so. I think the only one thing that I can say is maybe a possible negative with this list is the open top. Yeah. I found this to be an Achilles heel with some events, and because canny players may sit there and go, "Ooh, I got a pole-mounted machine gun that is not really going to be useful for this event, and you just gave me a gift." Yep. Now I can sit there and start raking one of your Hellcats or all the Hellcats, and you can start putting pen markers on them. And that can get really ugly, I think, really fast. And you could even run into a high risk of getting penned out as well.
But the important thing here for me is he has 5 order dice. And in the meta he's going into, that's the highest order dice count. So most of his opponents will be at 5 or below 5. So they're not going to be able to deliver all those pins that you're talking about, because you're
Yeah.
going to have to deliver a lot of pins if you want to pin them out. Um, it is a threat. I agree, and especially if the opposing tank army can start like
Yeah.
split firing with a coaxial machine gun and a hull-mounted machine gun, and then pin two of his tanks at once. That might start to slow him down, right? Another thing to notice is just one of them hasn't got recce. He didn't have the last 10 points. Oh, that
Yeah.
sucks.
I heard a
But
lot of players say that, like, oh, I just need a little bit more. Like, nope,
yep,
gotta
yep,
keep it under.
yeah, got to keep it under. And I think for this is the Hellcat he's going to lead with, right? This is the one that drives up and takes the first shot of the game because all the others can recce, but this one has to go first and just go and do something. Because it's not as protected as the others, so he might as well throw it up and take the chance. Yeah. And then finally, for the 1250, we wanted to talk about Stephen's army.
Yeah.
And here we go. So this is Stephen's army. So 18 organized, 1250. Inexperienced platoon commander, and then Fallschirmjägers, one, two of those, 5-man units with assault rifles or SMGs, so very, very dangerous if you can get them up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Panzer Grenadiers with double machine guns, double Faust, also very, very dangerous. Very expensive, but very
Yeah.
dangerous. Spartruppen, I'm seeing almost every single German list now has Spartruppen, right?
Yep.
So useful.
I sold that on so many people when I played them, and they're like, what is that, Spot Trooper? Yeah. And they're like, oh my God, that unit is so good.
Yeah, for 60 points, 4 veterans that can go up and infiltrate. Perfect.
And not only that, you do the field craft
Yeah,
on
yeah,
well, and you just keep them in cover, and they're even more survivable in
yeah,
cover because
yeah,
of that.
yeah. And then the AT rifle team that most people are taking in most lists, just because it's a very cheap order dice and very useful. And then this one was something that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, but oh my God, is the SDKF set 250/4 ever so popular right now? Everyone is taking this prototype. It's the like going into the WTC. There are more of these than any other half track at all, like in any army. This is it. Double pintle mounted machine guns, of course. That's why people are taking them, right?
Yep.
And then a heavy weapons platoon, inexperienced commander. These were a little bit of a surprise to me. Inexperienced medium mortars. I haven't used my inexperienced medium mortars since version 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, if you haven't got the points to buy them regular with a spotter, then yeah, you take them inexperienced because
But I think they can still be effective,
yeah,
and I think again one of the other things I've not seen a lot of people utilize yet in the game is being smart with indirect fire and
mm,
mortars, and in particular howitzers and dropping smoke.
yeah,
As a French player in V2, I used to drop smoke and annoy the ever living heck out of players, and they would just like look at me going, "Why are you doing that?" And then suddenly they go,
oh,
"You
you
just
blocked the whole table. Yeah,
block all my fire lanes."
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
And now I'm going to
nice.
maneuver around for another turn or two, and then I'll
Yeah,
wash, repeat, and rinse.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that actually might be a thing, and I've done it myself at the last World Championship for 3-man bolt action at World Open War, where in one of my games I dropped smoked everywhere and just moved that to move up. So it can be effective. It really can.
Mhm.
But remember here that the light mortars cannot fire smoke, so it's only the medium mortars that he can fire smoke with.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep in mind for his opponents as well. AT rifle, and then as you talked about the drillings. Oh my God, the drillings! These are so good.
Pucker up, Buttercup.
Yeah, they're like 3 light autocannons at 135 points. That's wow, that can shred most things. A Puma is of course also very good. That medium AT gun, good for hunting other tanks and good for going up a flank and then getting flank shots into that Sherman or whatever. Yeah. And then the Stummel for transport, right? It can transport 8 men, so he can put one of his units
Probably the
of
mechanized.
SMGs and then maybe an officer into that. Yeah, maybe an AT rifle as well.
He didn't have the mechanized on this one. It's like, no, he didn't.
No, he didn't. But coming in from the reserve and just unloading a bunch of SMG armed veterans onto an objective or like right next to an enemy infantry unit, yeah, that can still hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this one's going to be a tough competition. One of the other lists I saw, there was the Kubel Blitz as well, which has always been one of my favorites as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the Kugelblitz, that's the double Death Star. So he had the Kugelblitz and he had something else as well. One of those heavy tanks of some sort. Can't remember it now. Oh, I can't find it in my notes. Anywho, but that is also the Kugelblitz is very, very dangerous, isn't it? Double heavy autocannon. Yeah. Just a pity it's so expensive.
Yeah. Well, it really is not in the grand scheme of looking at it. Its effectiveness. I think it's got a good value to it still.
Yeah. So Patrick, that is it from us today. Do you have any final words for all the players coming down?
I just want people to have a good time. That's always been my prime concern. First off, is I want people to just come down, have a good time, particularly those who are traveling in. We got one guy that comes every year from New York. We've had couple of international people. So I always like to leave the door open. If you ever want to come visit, you can come and hit up Universal or Disneyland as well. And I always joke, I said, hey, come to one of the HMGS-south events, bring your friends, bring your family, and have kind of turn a little bit of a vacation and a little bit of fun at the same time. It's what Florida is all about, is just having that little experience. But to me, it's just it's about kind of having like that informal gaming family get together, and you have all the weird uncles in the same room rolling dice and having a good laugh, kind of thing.
All the weird uncles. How you do describe us. Right. Thank you so much for coming on, Patrick. And I think we should talk again once the event is done, go over what happened and what we can learn from this event.
Yeah.
To everyone going, good luck, and we'll see you next time.
Have a good one.